Hello folks, my name is Kyle Thompson and welcome to my series on the Quiet Revival, the growth of young people coming to churches and how music can play a part of that. And I have got a very special guest, it's Reverend David Gray.
Thanks, Kyle. It's good to be part of sessions with you because it's been good to support you actually this past wee while as you've been interviewing other people. So now I'm in the hot seat.
Now
with
you're
you.
in the hot seat,
Okay.
Yeah. So can you tell me about your role and your experience as a minister?
As a minister, okay, well, it's a long story, but clearly it involves many things. It's involving engaging with people. It's also involving taking the Christian gospel, the message of the Christian faith, into the public realm, but also nowadays increasingly in a kind of creative and constructive way. So there would have been a time in church where society was structured so that everyone would go to church, more or less. And those days have gone. Over the past decades, that has depleted and diminished. And so ministers like myself now are faced with a challenge. We actually need, I think, to be creative and engaging in terms of finding ways to connect with people out in the world, in our community, because those good folks aren't necessarily automatically going to come to church. So there you go.
And how important has music been in your ministry, do you feel?
Well, I think music is really powerful, and especially in the Christian faith, music has always played a part right through church history in its various forms. And of course, that's evolved and developed as musical instruments have evolved and developed also. Now, as a church, and typically the Church of Scotland still seems rather attached to organs, and organs are lovely, but organs can't necessarily meet the tempo of some more modern music. And so what has been lovely in recent years to witness and see is a growth and a depth to Christian worship and praise music. And now, of course, with the aid of technology in terms of social media and online with the internet, there's an accessibility to that music. And that's really powerful. And here, of course, at GLPC, during services, sometimes we play vid clips because we've got a great AV setup here, and we can actually include a wider range of music as well as what might be regarded as more traditional. So it's powerful, it's really important, and it's evolving.
Have you noticed any different responses to either traditional hymns that you hear or modern worship songs like what you've played in the services during your services?
Well, I think that it depends on the generation you may be referring to, Kyle. I think that there's some older folks who've maybe been going to church all their lives who will naturally default to some of what they would regard as traditional hymns. Although once upon a time, all of those hymns would have been brand new. It's just somehow in time they've become known as traditional.
Yes.
But there's other generations that would relate more to a different kind of approach to worship and praise. More modern instruments, perhaps, more modern arrangement of music as well. And there's some really powerful material out there, and there's some really wonderful, great Christian artists who are around and have been now for many years. So there's something powerful in all of that.
And a question that I've actually wanted to ask for ages now, how do you decide what music goes into your services?
Okay, well, that's a really good one. So I've kind of got a system that I've developed.
Right.
And what I do is it's very much based around the scripture. So we have a worship planner, and so there's a scripture based on the Revised Common Lectionary for every Sunday of the year.
Right.
And when it comes to that Sunday, or we're approaching that Sunday, I often look at what the scripture says. And I usually pick out key words in that scripture. And that then begins to direct me to particular hymns or songs. And then over and above that, what I try and do in the service is create variety. So variety of pace and tempo of music. So we usually try and start with something that's quite modern but meaningful, and then we might have something that's more childlike, for instance, in terms of dealing with children in particular. But then through the service, we might have hymns or songs which are either more reflective or more upbeat. And I try and create a mix. And typically in our services these days, we might have 5 hymns or songs during the service, and they're all interspersed with other things that are happening. So what I'm really trying to do is create a menu for everyone to engage with and participate. And that, well, as far as I'm aware, it seems to work, but others might say otherwise.
I like the use of the word menu there, by the way. That's really
It's a
good.
good word,
It is a
actually. It
good
is a
word,
good
isn't
word.
it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah, have you seen more young adults attend church recently? Because we were talking about this previously.
Yeah, yeah,
So, do you want
absolutely,
to expand your
absolutely.
thoughts?
Okay, so you're right, Kyle. And what has been interesting is that we've come through a period of time, not just the Church of Scotland, but many mainstream denominations in the Christian faith.
Mhm,
We've come through a time where there has been decline over many decades, going back probably to the 1960s onwards.
mhm,
And certainly in my lifetime, and I won't tell you when I was born, I've, I've, I've been aware of that decline, but it's not been wholesale because there are churches that are bucking that trend. There are churches that are growing. There are pockets of life in places. But interestingly, here, in the past few months, what we have noticed at GLPC is that we've had a lot more younger men coming to church, just turning up completely unannounced, unexplained, no prior invitation, never met them before, just coming to church. There's been a few ladies as well, actually, that have come along too.
mhm,
And that's been a very noticeable difference that I'm aware of. And I've been trying to make efforts to connect with these guys
mhm.
as best they can come to us because they have other commitments, work, all of that sort
Of
of
course.
thing. So we're trying to work hard to connect with these guys, and ideally, I'd like to do something with them, like the Alpha course or
Mhm,
something to help them explore faith and why it is they're feeling this prompt to come to church.
mhm. And do you think that music can play a role with these people coming in? Do you feel?
Totally, totally, because our world is shaped and formed by music. Wherever we turn, wherever we go, we're faced with music,
Mhm.
especially, even if you go to the shops nowadays, piped music is just commonplace.
Yeah.
Supermarket, whatever. It's just part of our background. And if you think about in terms of the industry,
Mhm.
the music industry alone is probably worth billions,
Yeah.
whether it's dollars or pounds. And so music is a powerful emotive entity. It's a force, actually, that can shape people. And it can also encourage or alter mood, if you think about it.
Mhm,
And so that's true in the mainstream of music. But I think it's also very true in, in Christian worship and praise.
mhm.
Because through that form of music, there's opportunity, I think, for God to interact with us and for the words and the lyrics of those hymns or songs to actually be imprinted within us, to have a deeper meaning.
Mhm. And do you think that music can help create a sense of belonging within the congregation? Do you feel?
Yeah, I think it can. I think it can. I think here at GLPC, here in Govan, we've got a distinctive place and a distinctive people. And so you were asking a question about how might I construct a service with hymns or songs. And part of the thinking is reflective of the nature of the people or the Christian community that we have here.
Mhm,
And it is distinctive. And so I often choose hymns that are actually, or songs that are interactive. So it's something that people can clap to or
yeah.
stamp their feet to or
Mhm.
get on their feet to or whatever, just to engage with more. And sometimes we use musical instruments. We
Yes.
spread them around the church, and people
Yes. Some
wave them,
cymbals and
shake them.
tambourines as well.
Exactly, exactly, and
Maracas as
yeah,
well.
exactly. And I think that's something peculiar to Govan. It's maybe not distinctive itself. I'm sure there's other churches where you might find that,
Mhm.
but maybe not many. And I think
Yeah.
it's a very particular thing for Govan, and it's something that as a minister, I've recognised and I wanted to tap into because ultimately, what I want to try and do is enhance people's faith experience.
Mm.
And that can be through the spoken words, but it can also be through what we sing together
Mhm.
meaningfully.
Yeah. That brings me on to my next question. Do you feel like music can bring people closer to God that sometimes sermons can't do? Do you feel?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that God can use music and He can speak through music. So, for instance, I'll often play things via my phone in the car. If
Mhm,
I'm driving somewhere, maybe it's on YouTube or Spotify,
mhm,
and I might play, I'm listening to a wide range of music, but I might be playing Christian music.
mhm,
And there's times I've felt a very close presence of God. and I'm just driving my car.
Yeah.
And there's times where some of the words and lyrics and actually the music that's set to those words and lyrics just strikes a chord and comes alive and encourages and inspires. So there is something going on within all of that.
Mhm.
This is a definite power force that we need to harness for good,
Yeah.
ultimately, I would say.
Can you name any examples where this has happened, or like any songs?
Oh, goodness me. Right. Well, now you really put me on the spot. Well, actually, funnily enough, I'm listening to a group called Shane and Shane,
Mhm.
who I've just recently encountered through YouTube.
Mm.
And they've got some lovely songs. Some of them are original, some of them are actually, they belong to other artists.
Mhm.
Michael W. Smith is also a really well known, interesting Christian artist.
Mhm.
Stuart Townend, of course.
Yep.
I mean, even Ian White, who we've been speaking to,
Yep.
speaking about recently. There's still things that Ian has written and played which actually are still powerful. There's such a wide menu, again, that word menu, of choice out there. And
Mhm.
these are just names that come to mind.
Mhm.
There's some kind of golden oldie names that I still play, which you will never have heard of because you're too young.
Yep.
But I think what's really encouraging is that there's clearly an emergence of new and wonderful talent
Mm.
musically in the Christian sphere.
Mhm.
And that is so encouraging. And also the nature of music is, I think Christian music is changing and evolving. And so if I think back to what worship or praise songs might have sounded like 30, 40 years ago, there's a difference now. There's
Mhm.
something happening. Matt Redman's another name that comes to mind.
Mhm.
I listen to Matt as well. Wide variety of people.
And yeah, my other question for you is: do you think that there is a quiet revival happening in Britain? Not obviously just in this church, but elsewhere. Do you feel?
Yeah, I think there is something happening, but it's a little bit controversial just now,
Yeah.
particularly about the polling of this.
Mhm.
So the term quiet revival, as folks may know,
Mhm.
came about early last year based on a survey which the Bible Society of Great Britain undertook.
Yep.
And they used particular parameters and measurements for collating that information. Now those parameters and measurements have since come into question by some, and I was just reading an article about that recently. But it's a very nuanced situation.
Mhm.
So some are now saying, well, hold on, maybe there isn't such a quiet revival as we imagined. But the Bible Society, to be fair, are saying, well, actually, no, we are standing by the results which we've found,
Mhm.
and we believe that they're credible. So I think in that nuanced response, something is happening. For a long time, some years ago, there was a resurgence in what was called cathedral worship.
Mhm.
So maybe about 20, 25 years ago, completely out of the blue, unprompted, younger people started going to cathedrals again. And that was regarded as being quite a thing.
Really?
Now, I don't know what the status of that is, whether those people who went then stuck with it and have stayed with it in the time, or whether it was a passing thing or fad. I don't know.
Mhm.
And I don't know if there's been any further research into the cathedral worship issue. But the quiet revival, I sense, is happening across various parts of the UK, but also abroad. And the other thing to remember too is that, here in the Western world, we've been used to, sadly, the decline of the Christian faith
Mhm.
in so many ways. But actually, in the third world, in other parts of the world, the church is growing, the church is booming, and
Mhm.
often, incredibly, the church is thriving most in places where it's most persecuted, which seems paradoxical. So worldwide, the church is growing, absolutely no question about it. The
Mhm.
Bible is the best-selling book year in, year out. In fact, so much so that it doesn't even appear on the chart of bestseller books because it's streets ahead of everything else, Harry Potter included. So there is something happening, but what we're seeing, interestingly, is a trickle of that coming into the UK.
Mhm.
It seems to have certainly been happening down south, in the south of the country. It seems to be happening in other parts of the country. To what extent it's happening in Scotland, I don't know. I think there's evidence of it, and clearly, there, as I said, there's people who are joining us
Mhm.
here, so there is something happening, but it probably needs more. It probably needs more study and more analysis.
Mhm.
And I don't know if anyone's able to do that just now, or whether the Bible Society are planning to follow that up. So yes, there's a question about the stats and the measurement and how that was the polling and how that was conducted.
Mhm.
But actually, beyond that, there's definitely something going on, or
Yeah.
going down, as they say.
Mhm. Do you think that the role of music in worship will continue to grow, do you feel?
Yes, I do, because just recently I've become aware that in Christian music, for instance, there was a time where it was a very definite, separate genre of music,
Mhm.
and it was separate from mainstream music. There's a very definite divide. Now, there was one or two crossover artists, arguably, in the past few decades, and Cliff Richard, for instance, was definitely one of them back in arguably the 70s,
Yep.
80s. He was definitely seeking to pioneer some kind of crossover. Amy Grant in the States, also similarly in the 80s, was seeking to cross over, and she actually had a top 10 hit in the mainstream music
Mhm.
charts, for instance, back in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
Um, but but as a general rule, there's been a separation. But what I'm recognizing and seeing now actually is another crossover. We're seeing Christian music step into the mainstream
Yeah.
music genre, and people, there's an audience for it. People are seeking it,
Mhm.
and because of that crossover, it seems to me that people who listen to music are quite happily prepared to listen to mainstream music and Christian music
Mhm.
overlapping
Yeah.
almost. There's no separation, and I think also the quality of and the production values of Christian music has improved dramatically. And
Mhm.
again, artists like Cliff Richard really needs some credit for that. And I know Cliff is now an older man, and perhaps younger generations maybe have a caricature of him, perhaps in some ways or other. But if you push that aside and actually analyse, he was an incredibly creative, pioneering force in music who's been able to sustain an incredible career span
Mhm.
over 60 years or more. And there's not many people can say that.
Yeah.
And he moved with the times, but also clearly proclaimed a Christian faith.
Mhm.
So in answer to your question, yeah, there's much more of a crossover, and people are appreciating and valuing Christian music as
Mhm.
well as the mainstream.
And my final question for you, what advice would you give to other churches trying to engage young adults through music, do you feel?
Okay, well, that's a really good question. I think actually the first part of the answer to that question goes way back to what the Apostle Paul once said.
Mhm.
And the Apostle Paul once said that he would use any and every means possible and available to him to present the gospel. So, in other words, what he was saying was, I will use the technology of my time to present the gospel.
Mhm.
And whatever emerges, I will also use that. Now, we've come a long way since Paul's time. And here we are, we're living in a world where AI is now the next big thing.
Yep.
So I would say that the church needs to be in on everything at the ground floor.
Mhm.
Here, we're using AV a lot,
That's right.
but we could do more. We were just talking about podcasts earlier before this interview.
Yeah.
So I think any church that wants to progress and grow will need to be praying, yes. Will need to be missional, yes. But also, I would say it needs to be using every and available means of communication that is available nowadays. And that means being tech savvy. That means utilizing all of the AV, all of the multimedia, all of the social media,
Mhm.
uh, everything, anything and everything, because that's a whole new frontier out in the world just now. It's,
Mhm.
as people are utilizing new technologies to communicate, the church needs to be in on the ground floor of that, I would say.
Mhm.
And in that way, I think that would also lead to an increased engagement with other people, with newer generations of people
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much, David, for doing this interview.
It's been great, Kyle. It's
Been
really
great.
good to sit here with you.
Thank you.
Great to support you in this venture.
Yep.
And I wish you well with sessions and with this project that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thanks to you all for watching this video. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.